Sigma Mostafa, welcome to Listening with Leaders. You are the Chief Scientific Officer for KBI Biopharma, which can be found at kbibiopharma.com. You have an amazing story to tell about your life. I can hardly wait to hear it. Thanks for showing up. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you for having me on this program.
Absolutely. Well, let's start at the beginning, because I suspect that to get to where you are today as the Chief Science Officer of a pretty important pharma company, you had a lot of climbing to do. Where did it all start?
Sure, yeah. So my backstory is I was born in a small country next to India called Bangladesh, and I grew up there and immigrated with my family to the US after high school. My name also oftentimes raises a little bit of curiosity. So Sigma is a Greek alphabet. My dad was a mathematician who named me Sigma. I actually did not like my name growing up because it was just so different from everyone else's name. So I did, though, from childhood, really was interested in engineering and biology and wanted to be at the intersection of those two fields. So after immigrating, I did my undergraduate at University of Texas at Austin, and then my PhD at Northwestern University, both in chemical engineering, and then immediately post-PhD joined Eli Lilly. I was there for many years and then moved to Fujifilm Diosynth, which is a contract development manufacturing company. And subsequently, 14 years back, I joined KBI and built the process development and manufacturing services group grounds up there.
Well,
so
tell us a little bit about what your role is as the Chief Scientific Officer for KBI.
Sure. So I'm responsible for the technical direction of the company. And I also have all the lab groups. So our cell line process analytical groups, it's about 600 people that report through my organization.
Tell us a little bit about the company. What's it involved in?
So we are a contract development manufacturing organization. Essentially, what we do is we develop and manufacture drugs, therapeutic drugs that go to clinical trials or to the market. So my interest from childhood has been to have real impact, tangible impact, and what better way to do that than bring drugs to patients. Yeah.
So who would be your typical clients?
They are biotech and pharma companies who are outsourcing their products for development and manufacturing. Yeah.
So you'll have a company that has an idea, or they've developed something, and are you involved in doing clinical trials as well, or is it this post-clinical trials when you're ready to start manufacturing and distributing?
So we are involved before the clinical trial. Usually we are receiving the DNA sequence, the information on the protein, and we are producing the actual protein product, something, let's say, like insulin or any of the cancer antibody drugs. And then we are purifying them, sending them to clinic for administration, or it's going into the market for commercial use.
So it would be, not being I'm a lawyer, sorry. I don't have a lot of science background. So let's say you've got a group of researchers.
Yes.
And they've developed a compound, a product, or an idea for developing a compound. Would they come to you and say, assuming they have the money, they'd come to you and say, hey, we'd like to have you manufacture this product in sufficient quantities that we can get FDA approval and start clinical trials?
That is exactly correct. Okay. Oftentimes, our customers have an idea, or they have done something in a very, very small scale, which then may or may not be scalable, right? You don't really know if that product will be stable, can really be produced in large quantity, etc. So we do all the analyticals, we do all the scale up and robustness studies. These are multi-year work usually that ultimately gets you the GMP approved, FDA approved product that can be administered to humans.
So basically you're commercializing the ideas that maybe academics or scholars or researchers have developed.
That's right. Yes.
And that's essentially what you do. And I know you confined to, again, my ignorance shows. You were talking about proteins and DNA and
Right.
therapy and cancer therapy and stuff like that. Do you guys are you in a niche where in this kind of commercialization space, or is it broader?
We make everything that's protein based.
Protein based.
So, right. So there are essentially, when we talk about medicines, there are two types of medicines. Some are chemically produced, right? They are called small molecules. And then what's large molecules are proteins. We do all types. So not just cancer therapy or any particular indication, but all types of indications.
Okay, I got it. I think I understand.
Awesome.
You've been doing this for 14 years. How long have you been the chief scientific officer?
I've been chief scientific officer about a year now.
Okay.
Before that, I was site head for our largest site. So I was responsible for the development and all the manufacturing. Prior to that, I built the process development business.
So here you are, pretty much at the top. I don't know whether you have aspirations of going higher into management, but it sounds like you're pretty high right now. What is it that gets you up in the morning, gets you excited to go to work?
Two things. One is I really enjoy working with the people we have. We have so many smart, talented, mission-driven scientists. Day to day, talking with them, seeing them grow. I really enjoy problem solving, all of that. And the other is ultimately the impact. Like we literally every year work on drugs, probably upward of 15 that go into clinic. We are commercializing products. These are oftentimes first in class or best in class drugs. So it's extremely motivating, actually.
I can imagine. I mean, you encounter drugs that really save lives.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
And I'm curious over the years how you have seen the science evolve around developing protein-based drugs and what kind of miracles we're seeing today. I hear about all this stuff. I don't understand it, but I just keep thinking that breakthrough after breakthrough. Is that kind of been your experience?
Absolutely. Technology is changing at a faster and faster pace, right? And even what we have seen with some of the COVID drugs and the switch to mRNA-based drugs is a big change. And the change came faster because of the pandemic. Yeah, technology changes that modalities and the success rate, all of those are going in the right direction for sure.
What do you think artificial intelligence is going to do to your business?
Only good things, actually. So AI is playing a role in, identifying molecules all the way to data mining and essentially a lot of automation around, hands-free, essentially execution, right? So we use AI for very early on checking the robustness of the molecules. We use AI for sequencing, looking at any kind of modification, mutations that might be happening. So yeah, it's all good. I don't see it as a threat at all.
And you see that AI is just going to become more and more important in the business as time goes on.
Absolutely. I think it can be a leverage, but it essentially will be absolutely needed. Otherwise, you won't be able to survive in this business.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah.
So you have all this experience. You have an interesting life journey from Bangladesh to the United States. What is it that's unique about you, Sigma, that has made you successful and allow you to rise to the chief scientific officer of KBI Biopharma?
So I'll mention a few things. So I'm definitely the scientific technical dimension and my, leadership experience, extensive experience. But one thing perhaps people don't realize about me is I'm tough as nail psychologically.
You're what?
I'm very tough,
Oh, you're
tough,
very tough.
yeah, as a nail. So what that does is I'm typically not diverted from my goal once I set a goal. So I I believe in long-term planning, right? So even if I have a short-term failure, I usually don't give up. I think the tenacity and the grit are probably the main quality as opposed to, just getting things right every time.
Right. And that is a quality that I think that I have in all of the 200 people that I've interviewed on this show so far, 200
Uh-huh.
episodes or more. That is one of the qualities that I see most often. It's persistence, tenacity, grit, and an abiding hatred of giving up and failing. Not failing, because everybody makes mistakes, but not giving up.
Right. And I find in terms of, within STEM and women, next generation scientists coming into the field, I find that overall, more and more women are in STEM and they do start in industry, but that staying with it longer term and not giving up, especially when you have certain challenge around not being able to network to the same level, perhaps, work-life blending, how do you balance that? Those challenges might be more, unique for women. And that's where I see women giving up sometimes. And that's one of the things I definitely try to address with individuals I mentor and I talk with.
How do you manage all that? Work-life balance and, not having the ability to network as well as men. You had to, and also being a woman of color. I mean, it's a lot of barriers.
Right.
How do you manage that?
So I think I've been very lucky to have strong mentors, and I'm very transparent and I think I'm self-aware on what my weaknesses are and what my strengths are, and I play with my strength, right? And um, yeah, I just have been successful in maybe in the right roles at the right times. So.
I'm going to guess again. So if I misstate myself, correct me, but I have a sense that you have had the opportunity to talk to many young women who are
Yes.
possibly considering getting into STEM.
Right.
When you talk to them, what do you tell them?
I tell them to, think about life in terms of then what impact you want to have on others, what will be truly satisfactory to you, and how fast technology is moving, where, the direction of technology, and that STEM is the right place to be. And it doesn't mean that if you have interest, obviously, on the, humanities side, you can always balance those. And I also talk about staying with it, right? Despite at certain phases of your life, you have to make choices and maybe you leave workforce, but you come back again, right? And start back where you left off.
Right. So, I guess what you're saying is that if a young woman makes a choice to get married, raise a family,
Right,
you can
exactly.
do that. And when your kids are old enough, you still have your skills. Maybe you have to do a little brushing up on recent developments, but you can always come back into the workforce
Exactly.
and not leave.
Right, right.
So, so this show is called Listening with Leaders. And I think as you know, because you studied a little bit about me, I'm a
Right.
lawyer turned peacemaker. And what I've learned is that when you really learn how to listen to people so they feel heard, magic happens. I'm curious about how you learned how to listen throughout your career. Because I would guess that early on you were probably ignored a lot.
Right. I do think that listening is effective when there is a foundation of trust and mutual respect and caring. So building the relationship and then, listening becomes then effective modality, basically, right? To just strengthen that foundation.
Mhm.
In terms of me listening to others, yeah, I early on in my career, I used to be a little impatient. Over time, calm down, and I'm a better listener for sure. I also used to try to solve the problem immediately, right? Myself, and now I listen and really try to lead the person to the solution, which is still challenging for me sometimes, but
Yeah, I mean, we have a natural inclination, especially if we're smart, to try, somebody presents us with a problem or an issue, and we immediately want to take our critical reasoning skills, critical thinking skills, and apply our intellect to the problem and solve it, because we can do it. I mean, that's just the way we're trained, the way we think, and
Right.
it's natural. But that sometimes can be the worst thing you can do.
Exactly, because my role is not to go and solve every problem. My role is to, have next generation leaders and have a robust organization that can function
Right.
independently.
So I would think that part of what you're doing is working 2 or 3 levels below you. You said you had something like 600 people working, so you must have 3 or 4 layers at least of
Yeah.
people below you, and you're working down into the layers, training people how to solve their own problems and how to fix
Exactly.
stuff, and
Exactly.
how to listen, and how to become leaders themselves, so that they can grow in the organization as
Right.
they wish, and as they have the
Exactly.
aptitude for doing it.
Yeah, I think it's a balance for me, because I want to grow people and have them solve, but I also want to have the pulse of the organization and know where things might be faltering, and jump in and gather people as needed, right? To mobilize a team as needed. So over time, I have, I've learned how to do that essentially. But um, talking about listening, it's a skill. You know, for me, on the other hand, certainly, early on, being listened to was also difficult, as you pointed out, right? And I'm naturally a pretty quiet person, so it has been challenging, but I think over time I've again learned to focus on the facts, focus on the problem solving side of things, and things tend to work out.
Yeah. How do you avoid micromanaging?
I had to learn it because my early jobs, I was a bit of a micromanager, I think. And it's a question of how do you get the information so things are moving, progressing properly, but not actually be in the weeds. And now I'm very much, hands off, except, I get the right updates and the right trackers, and the right metrics basically.
Mhm.
So I know that the organization is performing as it should.
So if you were talking to younger people who are rising in leadership, and
Right.
I think the hardest transition is moving from a producer to moving to a leader.
Yes.
Because when you're leading, you're no longer producing.
Mhm.
And if you're not ready for that transition, all your identity is wrapped up in producing, and so you're gonna tend to micromanage because that's producing, right?
Very correct.
How do
Yes.
you manage the anxiety that arises in that transition?
So I do a lot of coaching to, new managers, and oftentimes we find people who are star scientists, star producers, as you're saying, they find it hard to let go. And they have very high expectations of themselves and their team. But, we have a lot of trainings as well. And basically we create their performance expectations based on your successes. If your team succeeds, right, and they're happy, and you're retaining them and you're growing them, and you are not just succeeding in your department but across other departments, across the organization, you are impactful. So it takes a bit of time for people to get adjusted to it, because they think their results are just those products that are being produced.
Right.
So
I
yeah,
would
it's an
think
adjustment.
I would think that it would be hard for somebody who's a scientist and has gone through a PhD program and postdoc, years and years and years of study, and then maybe 4 or 5 years of actually doing lab work and actually doing science,
Mhm.
to drop that and become a leader, where you're not doing that anymore. That would
Yes,
that would have to be hard.
that is hard. And what we see is that usually there are two ladders, right? At some point, people become managers and they can move on the management ladder, or they stay in the science ladder and they may not have too many direct reports, but they become advisors and fellows. So that is partly because of the, some personality differences we see.
Right.
And the best of scientists are not always the best of managers. Those are good conversations, and people usually come to the same realization at some point that this is a better choice for them. This is where their satisfaction lies. And maybe they just want to be very close to science. And
How do you identify people who may have an aptitude for leadership?
we create a lot of opportunities early on for leadership. And see, give people chances, right? And knowing that they may or may not succeed. And those who do tend to move very quickly through
Wow.
the ladder. Yeah.
So it seems to me that it must be very gratifying for you to see young people either go up the science ladder and mature as scientists or jump ship and start going up the management ladder to become leaders, and watching them mature and develop.
Right.
Got to be very satisfying.
It is. And I have in my leadership team, that my immediate direct reports, a lot of people who I recruited maybe a decade ago, and seeing them now be great leaders is truly one of the best achievements for me.
So what do you think's next in your life? Are you going to stay as chief scientific officer, or can you go higher or do something different?
So my focus is, as I said, I became a CSO about a year ago. So a lot to do. We are expanding very fast, and we are determined to be the leader in the next generation CDMOs. So I'm very focused there. I do have other interests and gradually focusing more on how to give back, right? So both here in the US and in Bangladesh, I'm associated with some NGOs and some volunteer organizations. And I'm very interested in disadvantaged youth and their education, how to, computer skills or just vocational skills building. So I'm in my off time, those are the things I'm focusing on. But right now, being a good CSO is the focus.
It's a full-time job, isn't it?
It's a full-time job, yes.
Yeah, but I think you're onto something that's really important that I've learned, and that is that it's not about the paycheck. If you're not creating meaning in your own life, either because of the work you do or because you have outside interests or passion about, for example, helping disadvantaged youth learn,
Right.
then it becomes kind of a flat existence. And
It's not possible. I think you have to love your job to do, this kind of job. It's a lot of work, and yeah, absolutely. I don't think you can maintain the balance, in work-life balance and continue day in, day out doing the job without enjoying it.
yeah, and that's what I tell young people. I tell them, don't worry about the money.
Mm-hmm.
Follow your passion for a while. I mean, you've got to be practical at some point in time, of course. And your passion has to be, it can't be a narcissistic passion like you want to be a rock star,
Right.
right? If you have a passion to help people
Right.
or serve others, follow that for a while and
Mm-hmm.
see where it leads you. In my case, it led me to leave the practice of law,
Mm-hmm.
to serve others as a peacemaker. And that led me into training people serving life sentences in maximum security prisons, how to stop prison violence.
Mm-hmm.
Very different,
Fascinating.
very different.
Right.
But to your point, that's the kind of work that creates meaning and makes what you do worthwhile and gives you self-esteem and as a human being
Exactly.
that we're doing stuff
Exactly.
for other people.
Fully agree.
Really cool. So one more question and I'll let you go. What's one thing about yourself that we wouldn't know about unless you revealed it to us?
Well, it's a family sort of a trend we have, and that I don't think anyone would be able to guess, if they met me, is we are really into acting. So my dad, who was a mathematician and who named me Sigma, later in his life became a film director in Bangladesh. And when I started undergrad, I had a dual major of math and acting, and then I switched to engineering eventually. So yeah, we are really passionate about acting, movies, theater, etc.
I
I
would,
decided not to become an actor and become an engineer instead, but
well, I would have never guessed. But I can understand it. I mean, you would know this, but I play jazz violin.
there you go.
So there you go. And it's funny how we work both sides, right? The hard science, the
Right.
logical thinking, the scientific method versus, to your point, the humanities, the music and the art, drama,
Mhm.
theater. What fun is that? Well, good for you. Well, Sigma, it's been a real joy talking with you. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule to be with me today.
Thank you, Doug. Really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you.
You're welcome.